The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Listener or viewer discretion is advised. This podcast episode is for educational purposes. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast does not reflect the views of our employers. Where applicable, any allegations are alleged until proven in a court of law.
Thank you so much for watching this upcoming episode. Please don't forget to like, follow, and share. Okay, so let's get started. Hey, Upstairs. Thank you so much. We are glad to be here for another episode. And today's episode is actually a follow-up episode to one we did. That was our very first episode of season 3. If you don't know what we're referring to, go back to episode 1 from season 3, and it's called A Haunting Failure. But we are extremely glad to be able to come back with a follow-up episode with potential change. So thank you for joining us.
Hey, everyone. As always, thank you for joining us. Let's get into it, T. What do you think about these upcoming changes? Because I definitely feel like this is something that we did talk about when we first discussed it. Something needed to be done, and that there needed to be more checks on these children after the fact. Okay, you're adopted or you're no longer in the foster care system, but we definitely talked about it being some checks on these children to make sure that they was okay.
I think we should probably start a little, because to refresh the memory of our listeners, that episode we talked about Blake and London Devon, who were adopted from foster care, which ultimately led to their death. To put it plainly, we have a hard time saying what it is, but I think we need to be a little bit more comfortable stating what it is, because that's the reality. Like, we use unalived and stuff because that's a TikTok terminology. But we are a podcast. And the fact of the matter is what happened to them, and that whole process led to Blake and London's death, which is jarring to hear. Like, even when we say it, like, it's easier to say unalive, but I think it takes away the impact of what happened. But those 2 children were basically killed by their foster mother because of lack of oversight from the foster care system in North Carolina post-adoption. And that it's not this case that led to the reform of foster care, oddly enough. It was a case that we talked about during the process of this episode that I didn't have details on, but it was a young child who was killed, who was in her grandmother's care. This child was killed in her grandmother's care because of the lack of oversight and the lack of action in Nash County, North Carolina, where a child was killed. That is the case. And the woman's name is Patricia Ricks. And what came from that was Crystal's law. And the NC lawmakers do have a law that they are trying to pass called Crystal's Law. And that's ultimately stemming from what happened with Crystal and Patricia Ricks, who was just recently sentenced to lifetime in prison. I want to say, real talk, I feel like what happened, like, they're calling it Crystal's Law, and she was a brown, beautiful baby. And there seemed to be more traction on that law after there was news reports of what happened with, like, my humble opinion. But that's happening. And I'm glad for it that they're trying to make change, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. We're living in 2025. There's no good reason why things are happening within our determined programs. So I'm not anti-government. Believe you me, we have the purpose and we need people who are doing their damn jobs and are being proactive about how we handle those things, especially when you're dealing with children's lives. They need to be proactive about it because times have changed. We're dealing in current age and all the, like, their processes are from like the fucking Stone Age. Just saying.
I feel like the sentence that she got was very well deserved. She's going to live whatever little bit she got left right there behind bars as she should. I don't know if there is a such thing as justice for certain things, if that makes sense.
No, absolute sense.
You know, like, I don't know. That poor kid. It's so unfortunate that it always takes something so tragic to happen for there to be change. Why does it always have to take something so horrific to happen for change to happen, for someone to take notice? It should not take that. It's like, why are we being reactive instead of proactive? That's where it breaks my heart. Like these poor children, because we haven't even gotten to the other case yet, right? This poor child, and we're going to get into the other case too. Children have lost their lives. So for someone to realize that they were there.
Yeah. And with this case in particular, this happened in 2023. And that was April of 2023. But DSS, whatever, I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't always remember all the acronyms, but Social Services for Children in that area, they knew as far back as December that there was abuse in the home because they were reported, if I'm remembering my facts right, they were reported in December of 2022. So fast forward April 2023, this child her life was taken. And is it the, I don't know if it's a social worker. I don't know what the title is off top. But they knew December, January, February, March, April.
Caseworker, right?
They knew, you said state worker? They knew for at least 4 months.
Caseworker.
Thank you. So they knew for at least 4 months that there was abuse in the home. And obviously nothing was done because if something would have been done, this child would still be here today, hopefully in a better foster care home or maybe with a different familial care. I know that for North Carolina, the goal is to, maybe this is all states, but I know that the goal is to keep children within the first homes, second family, before they have to resort to foster care, which is fair. There's plenty of family members who'd be willing to take on another family member child because they're in a rough spot. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But something you said earlier, that woman was old. I'm not saying grandmothers aren't equipped, but if she knew that she was not fucking equipped, and I feel like you might have known, if you knew that you were not equipped to handle this situation, why say yes? Was it for the antics? So it would look like, oh, I'm a good family person. Okay. But she could have said no and the child could still be here.
only as a person that had the privilege of having such a good grandmother. So sometimes it's hard for me to swallow certain things that I see because I'm like, I can't relate to that. Right? Because our grandmother, like, took on the job of raising me and treated me very well. I mean, there was definitely some things that were old school that I learned, right, to do better. They said when you know better, you do better, right? So, which I had to kind of like maybe unlearn, or things that I was like, okay, I'm going to take this. And because she handled it like this, I'm going to handle it like this. And that was growth and over time. Like, for example, I think I shared with you that, our grandmother didn't really talk about certain things. Certain things was like taboo. Like, we're not talking about your menstruation. We're not talking about certain topics. And I think maybe because of some of her struggles and maybe some of her traumas, it was uncomfortable space for her.
Fair.
So I've learned that even when it's uncomfortable, right? Like, in my mind, I'm probably screaming, but out of my mouth, I'm calm about whatever we're discussing, whether we're discussing sex, whether we're discussing, what I'm saying, whatever it is, right? But as a person that grew up with a older person, because you did say something about her age, right?
She was.
You know how I am about Agnes, right? I feel like taking her age into accountability. Our grandmother was old when she raised me. She was in her 70s, maybe her 60s or 70s. Don't get me the line on that. But I know our father was really old, so I know she had to be up there. Right? So I don't know if age has, or if age should play a part
when you're dealing with someone who's 70 and a child that's 8. Hell yeah. I think so.
I don't think so, because our grandmother was old and she had me since I was, 5?
But how old was she when you were 5?
She was still, and when I was 8, she was definitely in her 70s.
Okay. But she's also a different person. This woman.
That's correct. But you can't, because this lady happened to be however old she is, and she did not do a good job. I don't feel like other grandparents that are older in age should be discriminated against because they are older. Some of them are very good parents. As a matter of fact, some of them are probably better than these younger generations that are grandmothers, and they fucking young as hell.
Well, I think age should play a factor. If you care, depends on the person, but age should play a factor because how mobile are you? I don't know about you, but my name's Aiken now, and I'm not 70 something. Can you keep up with a child of that age who has a boundless amount of energy? Are you tired? Do you just want to put your feet up and do shit? Like, those are real questions that should be asked, and that's on account of foster care too. Those are sub questions. Age should play a factor, 100%. Not everyone can be Agnes. Okay? Not everyone is mentally strong or emotionally strong enough to handle that battle. But it is a question that one should realistically ask themselves. Am I equipped? Am I emotionally equipped? Am I mentally sound to do this? Am I physically equipped? Those are all valid questions. Now, while it may seem like, oh, well, you're just trying to shirk out your duty of being a family. No. It's more just what you have to look at it big picture. This woman was not okay mentally. Stop it. Mentally and emotionally, there was wrong with her.
That should have been the takeaway. Not age, mental capacity.
But it's all of it. It's all yes, age is.
Because there's some people that's younger, people that are younger that don't have the skills.
Sure, but
There's some people are young and they don't know they're supposed to be parents, let alone
Are young people
grandparents.
infected by Alzheimer's? No. That's an older person. So like when age is a factor. Older people get Alzheimer's.
Hell, shit, I'm young. I can't
Do
remember
you have
shit.
Alzheimer's? You've been diagnosed? No. That's a different story.
I'm
Is people you are and go through do you Alzheimer's looks like? Because it's not pretty. People will go like when for some certain people, like sundown time, like they don't. It might affect men more than women, but like with like this is just it's not the same topic. But older people are impacted by things that younger people can't. So while I'm saying that it's not the only factor, it is a factor and should be taken into account. Like this woman should have had a full evaluation before kids were ever put in her care. I don't know how much age plays into it, but it is a factor. So that's what I'm saying. Like you have to look at everything when you're considering putting a child in someone else's care. How sound are they? How mentally okay are they? Are they taking care of their mental health? You can't just, well, they're a family member. They got it. No, it doesn't always work that way. Well, like I said, Agnes was a different woman, but not everyone can be her.
This is true, but this is very much true. But could you imagine what kind of life I would have winded up with if someone would have said, "Oh, well, she's kind of old,
Right.
so no, we're gonna find someone younger."
It's anything. It's any man's game. But like you have a scenario of foster care with two different experiences, but the same. Here's what I'm talking about. You've got one family who a child's needing care and they put that child within a family. But then you have the other scenario where a child is needing care, you put them into foster care and they went with an adoption and you both still have the same outcome. Like you have two different scenarios, but with the same outcome. So one child is placed with family, same outcome. The other one's placed outside of family, same exact outcome. Like,
so a lot of them decide to take these children because they see it as a source of income.
there.
Right? So they're not looking at, am I capable? And these programs that are placing these children in these homes as that either. They say, oh, we're gonna, what is
DSS?
But they're not. And I think that's a part of a failure too. If we're gonna talk about it, let's talk about, so many people be like, oh, let me get these kids, let me get these kids, but they say, let me get these kids, not because they're like, I want to be a good place for this child, not because, hey, their mama and their daddy's not handling them right now, let me step in, right? Like in our grandmother's case, right? So they're looking at it more like, okay, hey, I'm going to get some incentive for doing this. I'm going to get every month for taking care of these kids. I'm going to have some tax credits I get to claim every year. And that's probably how this 71-year-old woman that really didn't care about these kids probably wound up with these kids. But then the other thing I want to know is, how often did they check on these kids or this child? How often did y'all do those home visits? Because usually, now I'm not saying in every case, usually before you can actually get a child into your home, especially once they have gotten into the foster care system, right? Usually they're going to investigate your home first. What the home investigation?
Post adoption?
You mean? Not just post-adoption. Even if you have them in your home as a foster parent before you even get to the adoption phase, your house has to be investigated. And I know this for fact because I've done foster care for a little periodic of time, right? So they're going to do a background check. If you have children in your home, they are checking medical records for those children in your home. They are going to, that's only if you have children in your home. If you don't have children in your home, which I doubt this 71-year-old had any children in her home. I doubt it, but let's say she don't have any children at home. They still come to your house. They say you have to have fire extinguishers here. You have to have fire extinguishers here. You have to show that your house is equipped. Now, does anything to do with mental? That's for something else, right? We're not talking about mental. We're just talking about the home itself, because we haven't even got to the mental part, right? The home itself is supposed to be investigated. Hey, do you have fire extinguishers? Do you have a way out of this house? Do you have beds? Can the home handle 2 kids? That's the first step, right? Then they get into your health questions. They do. They ask you like pretty personal questions. What I did notice, they do have questions on there that have to do with your mental health.
But is that enough?
I'm not saying that they didn't do their job, but what I am saying is, how did they wind up there, and why were these children not checked on? And the fact that it took something this tragic for them to be like, oh, now we're going to start checking on kids.
100 years later. And, it's funny.
Oh, yeah, I know. You think so?
I don't think that enough. Funny thing, I don't know what type of mental health evaluations that they give for familial care. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're less strict when it comes to familial care, but what happened with Crystal is makes that no, because I'm like, okay, so she's family. Family's not always equipped to take care of other children. This is going to be an unpopular question. I had asked this unpopular question in the past, and I don't know if it was received, although I really don't care. Because when I asked this question, it was shortly after what happened with Crystal was in the news. It was like, I promise you, it was within months of that happening, and that story stuck with me because I was like, how the fuck does this happen? But I did ask the question. I'm like, well, what happens if you don't? What if you decide not to take on children that are not, that you didn't give birth to? I asked that question, and it is an unpopular question. But the reason why I asked it is because after reading that, it's a question you want to fucking ask. Can you handle it? Do you feel sound enough to do it? What's that support system? Are you going to be in counseling? Because I kind of think that you might need it if you're taking on something that you wasn't planning for in your life. You know what I'm saying? So I will ask a hard question, no matter how it's received, but it's a question that needs to be asked. Did they ask this one, Chris? Or was she looking for the paycheck and made it look good? So that way they wouldn't dive further into
girl, come on now. Come on. We know the answer to that. I'm trying to be funny. Do you go to a job interview and say, I'm a drug?
No.
Fucking hell. Fucking hell.
Who would?
Sure she did for the best goddamn
She's a representative.
They sure she did when they tell them, I like children. Yeah. Because all she was probably thinking about was, I'm going to get that check. I'm going to get that check.
Let's go come back to that age thing. Because she was probably on a fixed income. Social Security ain't doing much. Of course she gonna say yeah. Okay. Maybe not. Sorry. Nothing. That's where age is not the whole factor, but it does need to be taken into account. Can you afford this child? No, but then the subsidy that I get from the state will help. Is that your only reason for doing it? Because that subsidy is for this child and their care, not for you. First.
Not trying to say that that's not a valid point, because that is absolutely a valid point. But even if you're on a fixed income, right? I work, I have children, I feel like I'm on a goddamn fixed income. Okay.
here on this day and age.
Because we got a bunch of this
I'm
shit.
sure it ain't enough.
This fucking shit. I don't. No kids. And it does. I brought that float of wish. Okay, we're gonna take from there.
Girl,
Okay, just
like many of us who are not even on a fixed income are like, the state of affairs currently, we can't even afford fucking eggs.
look. Okay, so look. Even if they look at finances right now, I am financially, right, taking care of what I have in my home now. But if you're talking about adding 2 more children, that look a little different. So I feel like, yes, definitely look at finances, but we can't say, oh, can you financially afford to take care of 2 more kids? Like, is that in your budget? Hell, shit. Sometimes it's not in my budget to take care of what I have now, but I make it do what it do, because God is good. When it comes to finances, I could see them saying, okay, so her by herself, she's holding it down. But if she gets 2 more kids, I could see how she needs some help. That's just like child support.
It's probably not enough though, like realistically.
Oh yeah, she has 2.
I don't know.
So when
I said it's probably not enough. Realistically, I don't know. I'm not talking about child support. I'm talking about the subsidies you get from the state. I don't know what that looked like.
right.
But I have when you consider how things roll, if people on Social Security don't have enough money to live, I can't imagine that whatever subsidies they're getting is really enough to. Maybe that's why you have people who will adopt 4 or 5, like the Blake, what's her name? Like London.
I got you.
Devontae, like that's what she did. She ended up with like 5 kids out of foster care that she adopted. And I didn't always know until we did that story that even after adoption that you still get subsidy. So,
I knew.
so she was getting subsidies for 5 kids. But even that, like, fixed income is not enough to sustain how today's times. The amount that they talk about is from like 100 years ago. I'm being sarcastic. I don't know when they implemented or how they determined that budget, but I can guarantee you it's not enough. And that's how you end up with someone like Devontae, who adopts 5 kids and then is probably still receiving funding for those kids that she murdered. She was receiving money for them for however long they were truly missing, and they weren't. There are people out there who will do it just for the money. You're right. But if DSS and their caseworkers are doing the due diligence, how do you weed out the people who are doing it just for the money? Is it because they're overrun and they only can get people who would do it for the money? Is that part of it? That might be some of it. But then are those the people that are really safe? Are the kids safe? Or are they safe in an environment for someone who's just doing shit for fucking money? I don't know.
So I'm gonna be honest. I think I had to think about it for a minute. I'm a caseworker. First of all, I had a really good guardian ad litem. That's one, right? And my guardian ad litem, no matter what I did when it came to disrupting placement for whatever reason, she didn't care. She didn't never make me feel judged. Right? It's like, I'm getting the hell up out of here. I feel like because of her, I did get checked on frequently. As a guardian ad litem, she was almost like my big sister. You know how they had a big sister, big brother program? I don't know if that's still something that they still do, but I feel like that. I felt like she was, oh, bless you. I feel like she was that, bless you. She was that auntie that was going to check in on me, even though she wasn't my auntie. I don't know why that lady liked me. She loved me. I can't even lie to you. She did. Right? So I feel like in that aspect, I was fortunate. But when I look at the rest of my time when I was in foster care, I think I only had one caseworker. And he was a guy. And I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. He irked my nerves, but he didn't irk my nerves because of anything like disrespectful. He just irked my nerves because why did he irk my nerves? I have no idea. But this is what I will say. He always checks on us.
Okay.
He is the only one that I can honestly say he did surprise pop-ups. He came and checked on us. And he had a good relationship with my guardian ad litem as well. And even with that person that came and checked on us diligently, right? And I wish I could think of his name because I would love to give him a shout out because like I said, most caseworkers, once they put you in a placement, sometimes you never even hear from that caseworker again.
I was thinking that. I was like, who was my caseworker? I don't know who that was. It might have been my attorney, but I don't remember. No name, nothing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. Because usually once you wind up in placement, they're like, oh, they're placed. My job is done here. Did they come and visit you? Did they come see you?
I was in a foster care.
No,
so
right.
Maybe that was the difference. Because in the group homes, you got social workers.
No,
and
ma'am.
my social worker was my caseworker on the group home side.
No, ma'am.
But from the courts, I don't even remember what that was.
So I was in 1, 2. Now I want to make sure I'm right. No, 3. 3 different group home environments. And 4. That man came to see about me.
I don't ever remember.
Every time I got moved from one place to another, he checked in on me.
I mean, I didn't get mellow first because I was in 3 technically different placements. And one was a small group home in upstate. So it was only like 7 kids. And then when I came back home, I don't remember him. The only time I remember seeing my caseworker or lawyer was when we went to court. And then even with the second time around, I was like in a temporary type thing before I was even ultimately placed to I aged out. I don't remember my caseworker ever coming to say, hey, how's things going? But I wonder if it's because maybe they're dealing with the social workers. That's weird.
She's the only one that I really diligently remember checking up on us. Really. And I was in foster care for a good little minute. So I even had, I'm pretty sure she regretted that. I even had a caseworker that came and got wooed one time by our father.
Yeah.
When it comes to caseworkers, when it comes to these children, especially when it comes to caseworkers, you have to pick caseworkers that's not going to be biased. That's not just going to take a word of someone. They're going to do their due diligence, right? No matter how many times I pop up and see your representative, it might be that one time. Oh,
yeah. And then
now I see.
I'm not a caseworker, but I do feel like when it comes to being a caseworker in general, like you should look at what's being said from both parties, but then also what's not being said. Because sometimes what's not being said is the real deep. Do you know what I mean? Like you gotta look deeper. I'm a caseworker. I don't know what that looks like, but I feel like you could look a little bit deeper into that person's life, because had they done it in both of these scenarios, would there have been a different outcome? Like even down to the background checks for Devontae. Like, how do you know she has so many fucking different names? Because that, to me, hey, red flag. I feel like you've been married 5 times. That's inconsistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Times you have had 5 different names. She's had so many name changes. I'd be like, but then the background checks only go but so far, so maybe that's a fact. But at least
They asked that though. I remember them asking that though. I remember them saying, I mean, of course you can lie, which I'm pretty sure she did. There is a section on there where they say, have you ever been married? What was your married name? Have you ever used any other name, nickname, da 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 da. Now, I'm pretty sure you can always lie, but isn't that the part where we talk about that due diligence? Isn't that the part where we're like, how do we find out after this baby is deceased? No, wait, I want to make sure I'm talking about the same. It was 2.
right. With
It's
Devontae,
2
it was
of them,
2
right?
children.
No,
No,
it was
for
just
Devontae, 2 children were basically, and then she forced the other kid to help.
so. How in the hell do we get children placed in a home and we don't know that that person has went by
Part of what
5 other aliens?
part of what happened with
Five.
the yes, 5. I think it was 5. Maybe it might have been a little bit more, but at least 5 different aliases. But the issue with Devontae was that with the system here in North Carolina, it is under one big system, but each county works independently. So let's say Wake County wouldn't have access to Nash County. Nash County wouldn't have access to Wake. Wake County couldn't have access to Johnston. All of those, because it's individual networks under one network, I feel like that's part of the problem. And there was in one of the articles that we read, there was a caseworker, forgive me if the title is wrong, who was speaking to that fact, saying, hey, look, we're under one umbrella, but each county operates differently. So how do you account for that? The woman adopted kids out of like three or 4 different counties. So she could easily have put one thing on one application, one thing on another application, and one thing on another application. So maybe that's how she got around with it. But how far back are you going on these checks? Are you checking with her people? Like, who are you looking at her social media? Are you saying who she friends with on there? You know, right now social media is a thing. If the police can use social media to track down criminals, social service can be looking at people's social media too. So that was kind of what happened with Devontae. Is for Blake and London.
I mean, no harm. She was 71.
Or Mr.
She was in her 70s. I highly doubt. I'm so sorry. I could be wrong. I might be judging.
Where Miss Riggs pretty.
I don't want to keep my language. I don't want people to find out social media with this old ass woman. I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, we do have some women. I mean, we do have. I don't know. I know there's a couple of people that I follow on social media that they're older. I absolutely love them. I adore them.
They just use it differently than how we do.
I just don't use it different. Is that they're gonna find 51-year-old on social media?
I know a few people who are like in their 70s who are on social media, but they forget their passwords quite frequently. So you get lots of friend requests from them every couple of months. Like, I'm like, is this you? Because I thought we were friends already. No, but they just do it different. I have like legit.
They social media differently. I don't know how much they was going to find out about media.
So I agree with you. I doubt that they would be scrolling her social media because she would use it differently than how we would as a Gen X folks. She's probably a boomer.
Right.
She's probably a boomer, maybe. She might be a boomer or older.
No, I don't think so, because boomers was like our grandmother. I don't know if she was still being a boomer.
So she wouldn't be a Gen X, but before Gen X is boomers. That's like Barbara. Barbara's a boomer.
Right, but
She's 60.
really?
Yeah. She's like 5 years away from retirement where she could retire. She's a boomer. But it can span 15 years? 10? I don't know. But this woman was boomer.
Maybe our grandmother was maybe our grandmother was never a boomer. Maybe our parents were boomers. But she might have, that's what it was, right? Our parents was boomers, and grandma must have been something else. She was the whatchamacallit.
The silent generation.
Let's see. That sounds right.
Okay.
You want to know why her family sounds right? Because that's really how she was. She's like, no, we don't talk about that. No, that stays in the family. No, we don't want that. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I don't know if that's what that means, but I can see that.
Well, so she's probably more likely the silent generation, and she wouldn't be, if she is on Facebook, she probably forgets her password every 2 years or so.
Girl.
But, with Devontae, I'm pretty sure she had a Facebook. Because she was young enough, I'd say. Or younger. I don't really know. I don't have her age off top, but they could have been calling her social media. Like, who are your connections? Reaching out to those connections on anyone that she's known for a long time. Like, tell me about her. Even like amongst your friend circle, if you don't see that your friend is changing their name you don't think that something not right?
I changed mine for a different reason.
How many
I changed
times?
mine because I didn't want a certain.
See what I'm saying? A different scenario. She had 5 different name changes and not more that I can think of. Women is harder.
We were talking about social media. I was like, well, wait a minute. I've changed my mind on social media. She was talking about actual change things. Oh, yeah.
I just mean like in general, more. Like on both scales, they could have done more, and each person would have required something different.
I agree.
Which is fair. But they could have done more on both aspects where they wouldn't have to introduce a bill to prevent things like this from happening and requiring, like suddenly having to require follow-up care after the adoption. They're getting money from the state. You're damn right they should be fucking following up. And it shouldn't require this House bill. Like that's just common sense. It shouldn't get to this make things like, it should come to this.
I agree. That just leads me back to what I was saying earlier when I was like, why does it take for something like this to happen for there to be change? No, I don't understand it. I cannot. Any life loss is unnecessary. I think this new law is going to help keep some of these kids safe. Can these things still happen? I mean, it's unfortunate, but yeah, they can still happen. But at least now there comes in that due diligence where you can really see and say, we did our part. And that's only if they really do it like the law is intended. Right? And I don't know exactly.
Yes.
I don't know how often they're going to have to do these checks. Are they going to have to do these checks every once a month, every 90 days? I think the person that I told you, my caseworker, I want to say he came every 90 days. And then when he felt a little comfortable, I know I seen him at least every 6 months, if not every 90 days, which is, to me, it was significant because now I look back on it and I see all of these cases and I see some other stuff. And I was like, you know what? There's a lot of things I can say about him, but, he tried to do his job, though. It's been a little annoying, but he tried to do his job. So I think now that the law is passed, let's see if it's going to be effective. Let's see if now that the law is passed, they are actually going to
Hasn't passed.
they're going to abide by it. It hasn't passed. Well, but and some of these caseworkers shouldn't wait until it's passed. Some of these caseworkers, the first thing I would have did after this shit, I'm not even trying to be funny. If I was the caseworker, if I was working in social services, the first thing I would have did as soon as this shit, if I wasn't already, oh yeah, let me see how many kids I got. Let me get my little checklist. Let's see. Let's go see Lucy. Let's go see Jane. Let's go see John. Let's go see Jonathan. Let's go see Sam. Let's kill Emily. It shouldn't have took this long. It should have took this.
Agreed. And
Right? However, when the last time I see Tanya? Let me go check. Let me see. When the last time I seen Jane?
dude, I'm like,
Let me go
it's funny
see.
to me. I'm like, I don't even know who my fucking caseworker is. I don't remember her face. I don't remember the name, his or her face. I don't remember nothing. But it could be because it was so long ago and I forget shit. That's a fair possibility. I just remember the last time I visually remember is from when I was at court. Like, yo, this woman is tripping. I don't want to be here. But at least she listened.
What?
She listened. I don't remember, like I said, so whoever that person is, if you remember my face, I do remember that moment where I said to her, even if I don't remember any follow-up here, at least she listened. Because you will have people there who thinks that I'm an adult. I know better. That was the first time I understood that I have a power in my choices. Because I said to my caseworker or whoever she was, it was like a follow-up meeting after coming out of the first group home. And I said to her, nothing has changed. And in fact, I don't remember if I disclosed this part, but at the time, and I know I didn't say it in this way, but I remember saying, I'm having to take care of my mother at 13. Maybe, I don't remember what age I was, but I must have been about 13. But that was the first time I understood. I'm like, yo, this power of my choices when I speak up about something. And I did. And I want to say by that night, I was in that's a very short temporary overnight. Very shortly after, I was with Good Shepherd in that temporary placement. And then I was 2 months later, they were like, if you're on your best behavior, you might be able to go upstairs. Only the good girls go upstairs. And I was like, I'm going to be the best girl ever. And then I went upstairs. And that's where I grew up. That's when I knew I had an understanding that, like, if I speak up, even if I'm afraid to, maybe something good can come out of it. And something did. But I don't remember her with follow-up care. So it just could be my memory because I forget things. But I remember that she listened to me. She didn't just take what mom was saying. Like, I felt heard.
I definitely feel like that happened to me. I feel like they was taking one side of it and never really heard or asked enough questions when it came to me. And when they would ask questions, they're asking questions in front of other people that I'm not going to feel comfortable talking about this in front of. Like, I don't feel comfortable talking about certain things. At that time, when I look back on it, I'm not going to feel comfortable talking about this in front of our father. Well, I don't like calling him our father, but like, I don't feel comfortable. You know what I'm trying to say? Talking about him in front of our biological father.
Yeah,
I feel like when it comes to these caseworkers, it has to be caseworkers that are really going to be attentive, that are really going to do their due diligence, that are really going to lift, and they're going to know how to act. I think about a long time ago when I was being bullied with my youngest child.
Yeah.
Remember? And then the caseworker waited for her to come in, and this person is standing right there, and they're like, well, do you have a problem here? Right
Yeah.
there in front of the other individual. Like, that was a safe space to ask me that.
I mean, I think that's a key part. Like you have to really listen and take the child out the environment. Because I do remember having that conversation one-on-one. Our mother was not there in the room and we had the conversation. It was just her and I. And like, I remember she's like, here's like, in an adult way, like, here's your opportunity to say how you feel. And I was like, well, what do you do with this? You gonna tell her how you feel? And I did. But I think that was the key part, like taking the child out of the environment and talking to them about it and making sure that they're comfortable enough. Maybe it was easier for me because I was older, but she was 8. She was 8.
Yeah.
Girl. That girl was 8 years old. And the other kids, they were so young. So, like, that's where it hits. Like, dude, she was 8.
For those kids, for those children to have lost their lives, and because of money.
Maybe, or maybe she was,
I feel like it was about
maybe
money.
she was just too ashamed to
I feel like it
say.
was about
Well,
money.
for the Devontae, yes, the Devontae and Blake and London, yes, but the other woman, maybe she was too ashamed to say, I can't. I mean, that's a real thing. Sometimes people are stronger than the reality, and we choose not to voice the reality of that situation. Maybe she just couldn't, and she was too ashamed to say it, feeling like, well, we're family got to stick together. And while you're right, if you can't handle it, you can say no without judgment. I would respect someone more for saying, I can't handle this, than to take it on and not fucking handle it and end up like Crystal.
Right.
Because she couldn't handle it.
Right.
You couldn't control your anger, your rage, even. Because anger and rage goes into something like that.
It might have been even a situation where she was bitter. I don't want to say that she was forced into, I don't want to say she was forced into doing this role or taking on this role. But sometimes you do get pressure to take on certain roles. And you get maybe pressure from other family members, pressure for whatever reason. I'm not trying to speculate, but for someone to be that angry, right? Like you said, to have that level of rage, right? It has to be something there. And I'm going to tell you something that I thought about in the case of the grandmother, because that was actually her grandbaby, right? You know what I would have looked at as a caseworker? As the mother, as the biological mother. You already know where I'm going, right? So the biological mother is already somewhat dealing with something in some type of mental capacity here. If they are already not conducting themselves and let's say in a proper manner, right? Isn't that where the family history comes in? Like, did grandma, because that's a little different, right? If grandmother is like, oh yeah, I'm going to report this shit. how did it had to be something to already happen for this baby to wind up with grandma.
Fair.
So what happened? What happened with mom? What happened with dad? How did we wind up here anyway? And did grandma know what was happening when it came to biological mom or biological dad? Because was this mom's mom or dad's mom?
Great question. I do not know. Let me see if I can. We already have a full documentary about this, which I haven't watched. And if I remember correctly, both parents were attempting to gain stable housing. So,
Okay.
but also know in this county, this was not the first time that had happened. There had been at least one more instance that I remember reading about where the caseworker did not move fast enough, where there was continued abuse. And if I remember correctly, social services department for that county was completely disbanded, as they should. There's so many articles on this, like I'd have to dig for it. But I could be confusing it between Blake and London, but I remember reading in one of those articles that the family was trying to find stable housing. I mean, that could in this day and age, it's so easy. People live in their cars. They're just fortunate enough to make YouTube channels about it nowadays and get some money and potentially find stable housing. But there's a lot of families that's one step away from homelessness. So it's not too hard to see how easy something like that could happen. But I think that you are right. Like they need to be looking at what is the mother-daughter relationship before they place a grandchild in that home. Because if the daughter's not doing okay, stemming from stuff that happened when they're from their rearing, let's not forget that each generation does better. The generation that woman's from is a whole lot closer to slavery and what came from slavery and how what happened on these plantations turned into the familial, I'm gonna whip your ass. That's some real shit. We got whipped or on the plantation and that gets turned into getting your ass. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I do know in some instances that is a factor. So that woman grew up at a different time. Was she doing no ass whoopings? I'm sure she was. I am positive. Because we
whoop my ass.
well, we did, but
And there's not one ass whooping that she raped me that I didn't deserve. That's one.
I know. Sometimes your kid just needs a popping.
I was embarrassed. I deserve every bit of the whoopings that I got.
As an adult, we can be like, yeah, I deserve that shit. But as kids, we'd be like, I didn't deserve it.
We are a kid on the street. I hate it. But
Like I always say, not everybody could be Agnes, right? She's a different woman.
I needed it.
And everyone is different. But those are things that have been studied that people, the experts, I'm not an expert, talk about, like how those generations reared different. And even down to our generations, there's less. I sometimes feel like maybe I should have doled out more ass whoopings in my lifetime. And I probably didn't do enough. But I didn't because I was into the gentle parenting. And now I feel like maybe I should have been more into you get your ass beat today. But I didn't. And we saw how well that turned out in our home.
You're doing a good job.
Trying. We know that parenting is not a perfect science. We know it's not perfect as parents. So I can't imagine that it's easy to become a grandparent and saying, now I'm having to take on this responsibility that I didn't choose to have, but yeah, I'm forced into it. So maybe that's where some of her anger came. I mean, it doesn't justify it. There's no fucking justification. You should have just said no from the get. Because maybe this girl will still be living her merry life.
Right.
10 years old now.
Right.
But there's no book when it comes to becoming a grandparent who ultimately has to take care of your grandchild. There's no rule book, but that what happened with Crystal. And then when you consider what happened with Blake and London, you can't justify this behavior. There was red flags all over that woman, all over. Yet somehow she ended up with 5 kids out of foster care that she adopted, getting that money to abuse them. The bill is still it is Senate bill, NC General Assembly, Senate Bill 625. It's on its 5th edition. It was introduced in April of 2023. And the latest update was as of June of 2024. So it's kind of, I don't know what goes into moving something like this forward. But if you are in the North Carolina area, you guys call your local assembly people to talk to them about this. You can write them letters. You can call them. I think a lot of people are probably calling about other things right now. However, it's Senate Bill 625, and you can call your local legislation, senators, congressmen, talk to them about this bill. It's an important bill. As someone who came out of the foster care system, it is important. I am one of the lucky few, and I am very aware of it. So I don't take it lightly, but my experience was very different from a lot of children. Some children don't make it out of foster care or even familiar care. Case in point, we could do a whole nother episode of what happens in foster care outside of what happened with London. But there has to be more oversight, and I really hope that this bill will make that change, because it is needed. And it's not just needed here in North Carolina. It's needed everywhere. Yeah. That needs to get federal law.
Absolutely.
But we don't know what's happening there. I'm really happy that we were able to do an update episode on this. Even though, it's just shitty all around, I'm happy that we were able to do a follow-up episode within season 3. We talked about Blake and London, our very first episode of this season. And as we draw closer to the end of season 3, we're able to do a follow-up episode. In fact, before we conclude this episode, can we touch base on Robert Brooks? Because we recently did a few episodes ago about him. And you said you found out some information because that's our goal. We want to be able to do updates when it comes to these really important stories. And we're not at full episode yet for Robert Brooks. So why don't you kind of give an update on what's happening there while I look up
The crazy thing is, I'm going to say there's 2 different updates when it comes to this case. Was so taken back when I realized that everyone that has been charged has pled not guilty. I think to myself, did they not see the same thing that we saw? I know you said that you did not watch it, that you couldn't fully bring yourself to watch it. But wait a minute, are we looking at the same people? Because they even charged the people that were around watching, which I think is bravo. For you to stand there and watch and film and see what's being done and not intervene, nothing, you should be charged too. Absolutely. But all of them said, I'm not guilty.
So if I remember correctly, it was about 13 or 14 people that were fired behind it.
Well, it was from my understanding, I could be wrong, because I vaguely, because I wasn't in the type of environment where I could really engage. So I want to say it was 6 of them from my understanding, that was charged recently or brought in front of the court recently, and they pled not guilty. And then the other thing that kind of threw me for a little bit is I said something to my coworker, and I was like, man, you won't believe this SHIT. And I was like, yo, they are pleading not guilty. And there's no way in it. No. Are we looking?
And it's attention.
He no clue. Even harder.
He didn't hear about this?
Of this story. Not even heard of it. He's not the first one that I've said that I've heard say that, because when I brought it up to somebody that I was kind of messing around with at the time, she was like, what? What are you talking about? And he watched it. And he was like, wow. You know, so you're going to tell me why no one has heard about this?
Look how, but the thing is, like, I mean, we're in Carolinas. That I heard about it almost immediately. Maybe was it on TikTok? It might have been. The first time I got wind of it was on TikTok. And the people that I follow are of our community. So I feel like we would probably
I heard about it first.
Yes. But it's New York versus we're in the Carolinas.
Okay.
So I don't know how much that plays into it. But I'm surprised that there's people who don't know it. But at least, when we were recording Friday, I was like, okay, so Sharon, I know what we were talking about. So maybe, I don't know why some people are more attuned to it versus some people may not be. Nonetheless, but it was initially 6, but it's now New York prison guards were charged in the fatal beating of Robert Brooks, where he subsequently lost his life.
I thought it was one nurse that was included in these criminal charges
as well. I believe so, but
from my understanding.
9 officers appeared in court on Thursday. That would have been this past Thursday. So there was one nurse. I just don't know if the charges have hit her. She would have been still part of the correctional facility. So I'm just scrolling really briefly. I don't see anything about the nurse. But
okay.
Those who have been incarcerated, you have been either your head trial have been used of, maybe you're just doing the time that you were sentenced to. You deserve. I don't care what your crime is. When they treat you that way,
yeah,
they are worse. In my book, they would classify as criminals because they are people. People can make mistakes. Anyone can make a mistake that can land you in trouble. What you told me, I started saying that to my youngest, like trying to get him to see, this is something that you have said to me, and it's something Agnes used to say, and now I have adopted that shit into my regular teaching moments. Like, it's so easy to get in trouble, but it's hard.
It's hard as hell to get out of.
Go. So thank you, Agnes. I've adopted that. Thank you, Janine. But there's still people, and I mean, I think like there's some people that I'm like, I couldn't like. There's like one person in mind that I'm like, I don't give a shit whatever happened to you. If they up here, just saying. There's a handful of people that you deserve all the shit that you get. Every bit of it. Right? Yeah, there's few people.
Oh, you got all of it, huh? They get you the business.
But the vast majority of people who are incarcerated, there's people who are incarcerated unjustly and are innocent, just doing the time, or they do have the money for a proper defense and just pled guilty just so they can get over it. Like, this is a real thing. But just because they are incarcerated, does not give you the right to mistreat people, because that goes against law.
Yeah.
And if you are a person of faith, that goes against your faith. So people,
So just like the young man that had been in jail since he was 16, that young man had been in jail since he was 16 years old. He didn't even have nothing to
These
do with
correctional
it.
officers didn't care.
But served 28 years in jail for something he had nothing to damn do with. And this is how we treat people. Some of them haven't even been guilty or innocent. Some are sitting in the county. Because I believe this situation, he was in the county, wasn't he?
No, because I think he'd already been sentenced. He was in the county, but he would already been sentenced for his
okay.
time.
So I apologize.
I believe. I could be wrong, but we talked about a few. Remember, we were talking about what's his name at the same time, but I know he hadn't been sentenced.
Yeah.
He was just waiting for a trial.
Oh.
The young man.
Okay.
Menopause moment. I can't remember his name at the moment. But it don't matter. It don't matter if you've been you deserve some level of decency. We're not saying it should be easy, no. But you deserve some decency. I mean, you don't deserve to get your ass beat. We don't know what happened before this moment. We don't really care what happened before that moment. Nobody deserves that kind of fucking treatment.
Exactly.
Because if then dumbasses are out on the street by themselves, how would it look if someone jumped your fucking ass? Because that's exactly what that was. They jumped on that man and they fucking killed him.
Johnson. He was nearly 29 years in jail for something he did not do. In jail since he was 16 years old. Could you imagine being put in that environment and getting treated like that? Like, I don't care whether you did it or not, or whether it was an actual crime that you did commit or it was something that you didn't commit. No one should be mistreated that way.
From Crystal, London, and Blake. Well, we wanted it to be, because we're not sure we can do a full follow-up episode of Robert Brooks specifically, but we're doing another episode based on, we're putting it together. We don't want to give it away, but no, we have something else coming this season that kind of speaks to from those that are incarcerated. But we are super glad that we're able to come with a follow-up episode in the same season that we first talked about what happened there. So thank you. We appreciate you guys sticking with us to be able to hear part 1, and then ultimately this is part 2. So I'm just grateful and thankful for everyone who's sticking with us, and grateful for the fact that they're, they're trying to do some shit about this. That's a real thing.
Right.
Call your Congress people. If you are in the state of North Carolina, call them and talk to them about this bill. Talk to them. Yeah. So
absolutely. Again, thank you to everyone that listens in, whether it be on our YouTube, our Spotify, however you get your podcast. Thank you for listening and sticking it out with us. We cannot do it without you. Of course, as always, feedback. And we're always looking for guests. We're looking for guests that would like to come on and share their story or a topic that they would like, that they might have a better understanding of. If it's something that we have already discussed and you're like, hey, here goes a professional view, right? Then we're more than welcome to have you on. We do not do politics. Let's just get that out of the way. I mean, we have our own takes on whatever it is, but we do not discuss them here.
Yeah, we do not. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate the support. Catch you next time.
Love.